All right, welcome everyone. We're going to get started in about 1 minute or so. We'll kick it off by introducing our amazing guests. We'll do a little bit of instructions and we'll get to your questions. A few folks submitted questions ahead of time, so we'll jump in starting with that. Yeah, so we'll get started in about 1 minute. Maybe do we want to
let them know that this is sponsored by Potbelly? This broadcast is sponsored by Potbelly.
Not really, but if you want to sponsor it,
right. If you want to sponsor Techstars, that's food.
Right. Yeah, so this is the first mini AMA. We're really excited to kick it off with these two experts. If you're not familiar, mini AMA is a new education series that Minnestar is putting on. It is a, what?
Just want to make sure everybody can hear us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so we'll start with that actually. There is a chat bar down below. So if you are having any issues, if you can't hear us, please let us know. That is also going to be where we field your questions. So if someone could, we have a few participants on right now. Someone could just give us a thumbs up or let us know if there's any audio issues. That would be great. I'll start off with introducing myself. I started talking a little bit about, all right, audio is great, thank you.
Ask them how is the Potbelly logo looking? Does it look good? Can somebody confirm?
Some folks are jealous of Potbelly. Yep. My name is Maria Plussel. I'm the Executive Director of Minnestar. We are a nonprofit community organization serving Minnesota's technology community. This is Mini AMA. It is our first of our virtual education series where we get to sit down and have lunch with some experts on different topics every month. So we're really excited. I'm going to let my friends Brett and Clarence introduce themselves. Why don't you start, Brett?
Sure. I'm Brett Brohl. I'm the Managing Director of the Techstars Farm and Fork Accelerator and also the Syndicate Fund, which is our early stage venture capital fund headquartered here in the Twin Cities. Prior to moving to the investing side of the world, I was an entrepreneur for a long time. So I've built a few companies, both venture backed and bootstrapped, and taken them to exit. Also had a few not work.
My name is Clarence Bethea. I am the founder and CEO of Upsie, St. Paul-based company today. It's awesome. So yeah, we're just changing the way consumers buy extended warranties. So happy to be here.
Nice. And this month we're talking about perfecting your pitch. And when we were thinking about folks to talk to about this, these were two very, very obvious answers for us, both from having experience as founders and investors. Both of you mentor a lot in the community. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump in with your questions. Like I said, we have a few that were submitted ahead of time, but hit the chat bot down there and let us know what questions that you have. And we will kind of cycle through those as we keep going along. But I think in general, kind of kicking us off, whether from the investor perspective or you've seen a lot of pitches, both of you, what are some things that just off the top you look for in pitches that hit a home run?
Good.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like, do they really understand the market that they're playing in and the edge cases? And a lot of that comes out in like the problem and solution side when people get started. And so I think I take a lot of time, like, do they really understand what's happening in the market? And like, we're all making guesses, right, at the end of the day, but are they making like an educated guess based on like facts, or are they making their own emotion about how they feel?
I think a couple things. One is presentation, right? How well they present. And that's not just how confident are you up on stage, it's how concise are you, how quickly do you get to your points, how do you get your point across. It's more words are not better in a pitch, right? And so do you get those important points across really concisely and quickly? I always look for that. I personally love big vision. So I think one of the most often forgot things in a pitch is they're really good at saying, oh, here's what we're doing today, but they forget to say, and here's how I'm going to take over the world. And Clarence knows this, but I always ask founders, like, so how are you going to take over the world? It's one of the questions I always ask when I'm getting pitched. And I like to see that for, I I like to see that in a deck personally. Not every investor does, but I love here's what we're doing today, but here's where we're going. And that, when I think about the things I remember most from the meetings I have, it's the people, who they are, how are they, and the big vision tend to be the two things I actually remember the most from a pitch, more so than even what you're doing today.
So, go ahead.
I was gonna say, adding to that, Brett brought up like the person pitching, the design. I think another thing that's important to me is the design of the deck. Like, how much care are you putting into this deck? And I see decks pretty often because founders like to lean on other founders for their decks. And the first thing I say to a founder is like, this deck is ugly, and like, go spend $1,500 and find a designer and have them put together a template. So every time you show your deck, it looks the same every single time. Because I think, Brett, you can answer this, you as an investor, it's like, if somebody comes with a crappy deck, it's probably like, well, they probably don't care about their business as much versus, a really well done deck.
And that brings up one of the questions that we had was, all right, if I'm not a graphic designer, if that's not my area of expertise, how do I make sure that it doesn't look like crap? So you talk about, investing in the designer. Are there other resources that you've seen folks use?
There's a really good site called beautiful.ai, which is a lot of founders are using right now to put decks together that it might not be if you bring on a really great designer that's done a ton of pitch decks, but it's a really great stopgap that actually you can put beautiful decks together with beautiful.ai, and just free. It's free. So that's one that I would walk away with immediately. And design matters. I don't care what kind of company you are. It's not just for B2C companies. It's B2B enterprise SaaS. It's unsexy stuff too. Design of your deck matters. It's actually most often the first impression you're going to give whomever you're pitching. Before I meet you, I see your deck. And I get a lot of decks. Like, I get a lot of these. And sometimes if it looks really crappy, like, you might be the best founder in the world, I might not take a meeting because it just looks bad.
So one of the questions that we got kind of speaks to that deck, not as much from the design perspective, but I'm just going to read this. So someone wrote, what is the correct amount of information to include in a pitch deck that would be shared before a meeting setup? So the context is, they said, we heard from founders not to share a pitch deck before the meeting so that it can answer in-person questions. They also said VCs seem to want more information beforehand in order to set up a meeting. So they wanted to know, what are your thoughts on the correct amount and what will most likely entice an investor to set up a follow-up meeting?
I bet we got two different answers on this.
Well, you go first then.
Sure. So I have a theory behind investors, and it's probably known like community-wide that I don't like investors, right? So no, I love some of them, right, but not all of them. I think that a great affordable email solves all of that problem, right? Like, you do a great job in affordable email. So I asked Brett, hey man, can you introduce me to X investor? He said, send me affordable. If I do a really good job in that 2-paragraph email, the next thing they should be asking me is like, would love to meet you, right? If I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I think sometimes what happens is founders just send across decks, and to Brett's point, like, either they're crappy or don't have the information they want, So now you're kind of leaving yourself to be judged versus like giving really precise information. Here's where we are, here where we're at, MOM, here's all the information that will entice an investor to want to take a meeting with me. So I don't ever these days send a deck ahead. I send affordable emails so they know the basics of what they need to know. And if the investors say, well, can I see your deck? I always say no. Like, I always say, like, I gave you the information you needed to do your thing. Sorry about that, world. My bad. It's my wife too, by the way. And so I'm just not big on like sending your deck ahead, because like, if your deck is crap, you're done. Even if it's good, your chances are slim because you're asking somebody to wade through 13 pages, 14 pages, 15 pages of stuff. Like, you should be able to tell what we do, here's how we do it, here's the traction we had in 2 paragraphs. So that's my answer.
And so I think that in theory, that's nice, right? Like where you don't send a deck, and it does work sometimes. I agree, and I actually think the affordable really is the affordable is an art that every founder should have, and doing it really well is really important. Sometimes you'll still have to, well, can I see a deck? You'll have to get the can I see a deck. I think the biggest mistake, actually, it's in line with what Clarence was saying. I think the biggest mistake founders make on an email deck. So first of all, you have multiple decks.
Right.
You have a deck that you actually pitch off of when you go and you pitch an investor or sales or at a competition. Like you have a pitch deck that you're actually talking off of. Then you have an email deck, which is two totally different things. And the most common mistake on an email deck is that you put too much information in it. And the reason that's a big mistake is that what you're doing is essentially allowing the investor to make an investment decision without having met you.
Right.
And so it's in line with what Clarence is saying, like you want to get in front of the people. Like your email deck should be, all it should have is a hook, right? All your deck is a piece of marketing material that gets you a meeting. You don't want to put so much information in this thing where people can make an investment decision before they even meet you, especially at early stages. A fund is investing in a founder, not in your business at this point. And so it's, what's that one hook? And when you think about like deck, how you make a deck, like from slides 1 to 10, you should definitely not have more than 13 slides. When you have like slides 1 to 10, up front, you should put up front, what's that one key hook, in my opinion. There is no form of every deck should be this exact 1 through 10, 1, 2, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. It's like, what's the best thing about your company? That is what should go up front on your deck. Because, I mean, again, this is real. When I get decks sent to me, I will oftentimes get to about slide 3 and not go any further. Even if it's a company I am going to meet, actually. I actually don't go in depth in the deck, right? But usually in the first 3 slides, I can decide if I want to have a meeting or not. And so I might, if you leave your best thing to the end, I might not get there. If you send me a deck with, and people ask, oh, what about putting a bunch of stuff in an appendix? If I open a deck and it's got like 40 slides in it, I literally close it. I immediately close it. And it's not because I don't want to look at it. It's because usually when I'm looking at decks, it's in like the 2 to 5 minutes I have between meetings. And I'm opening it to do a quick look. And so it's not because I'm an asshole, right? It is because I don't have, I'm like, oh, I got to get to this later. I only have 2 minutes now. I was going to do a quick look at this deck. And I don't have time, so close. And then I might never open it again.
Well, and what happens? So now that Brett has hit the email, hit the deck, you are no longer in unread. Mm-hmm. So you're no longer at the top of the food chain anymore, right? So if I force Brett to look at a 40-pager, he ain't gonna do it.
Nope.
And that's why I think, going back, I think we're virtually saying the same thing, which is like that first impression, the first thing I put in front of you needs to be something that makes you say, I have to meet this founder.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's all about like the email off deck, the intro deck that you have is all about getting a meeting. It is not about giving them enough information to make an investment decision.
Right.
And I mean, you see some founders use like a 1-pager, also an exec summary. 1 page. That's also you can send off. Right. The founders I work with, I tell them to try and send an exec summary for like affordable and exec summary.
Right.
If they ask for a deck, don't say. I mean, it's hard to say no to some investors.
I say no.
But I wouldn't send it in the first email. I would send an exec summary and a good affordable. And usually that'll be enough information to either say yes or no. And that exec summary is just like a little teaser. It's a hook that hopefully gets you a meeting.
Right. And remember, the game is really to get a meeting. If I'm doing my job right as a founder, I'm actually setting myself up for a meeting before they even say yes for the meeting, right? And I give you an example. Last year when I was doing my tour, I went to Austin, I went to LA, and I had already set the trip. And when I sent the affordable, I was like, hey, and I'm actually going to be in LA on this date through this day, meeting with other investors. So what did I just do? I just created some sense of FOMO. They're like, well, you're already here. You're already meeting with some investors. Great, we'll love to meet. So normally that keeps people from asking for a deck. Because they're like, oh, well, he's going to be here in 2 weeks anyway. Great. And I think if you're doing your job as a founder, like you can get a meeting if you do a really good job with affordable.
All right, so you're both hitting on the affordable. If there's folks that either aren't familiar or just want to know kind of do's and don'ts of affordable email, what would you say?
Biggest don't is don't do a copy and paste affordable.
No, please don't. Yeah. Or yes, don't do it. But if you're going to do it, you better be pretty damn good at copying and pasting and making sure you read it. Like the whole point of copying and pasting is to be quick, but it has to be specific to that investor, right? It has to be things that like, I saw that you invested in blah, 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 blah. And I think every founder has made a mistake of like copying and pasting early on. And then you send the wrong thing to. I remember Brett did that early on one time when I asked an investor for our pre-seed round. Brett was like, hey man, just to let you know, you have this name is on the email. Like, oops, I'll resend, right? Like it happens, but
yeah. And just to real block and tackling what affordable email is, it's literally you have a relationship. So Clarence and I have a relationship with each other. I know some investors in San Fran. Clarence is going to San Fran. He's like, hey Brett, I see you know Jane Smith. Would love for you to put me in touch with him. And I'll say, okay, Clarence, send me an affordable email. Clarence will write an email that is specific to Jane Smith that says, hey, I'm going to be in San Fran on October 31st. Would love to meet with you. Here's why. Here's what our company does. I will hit forward. I will literally hit forward, and then I will write 1 or 2 sentences like, hey, this is Clarence. I'm an investor, really good founder. He's going to be out there already. Do you have time to meet with him when he's in town? I'll send it off to Jane Smith, and I wait for dual opt-in. So I wait for Jane to email me back and say, yep, go ahead and make the connection, and then I'll connect the two of them, and then Clarence will take me off and BCC me. He'll say, hey, Brett, immediately. He'll be the first one to respond.
Yep.
But hey, Brett, thanks for the intro to Jane, moving you to BCC. And then he'll take it from there. And so that is the art of the affordable email in a real quick synopsis. That's what it is. It's a really powerful way to get introductions. And for people that get asked for a lot of introductions, it's the way that we protect our network.
Right.
So you always want to make, I get asked for introductions every day, and my network gets fatigued, and especially if I'm just like emailing that introduction every time. So you have to do the dual opt-in thing. Right. Otherwise people will get mad at you.
All right. And I think the gracious way, it gives the person who we're asking you to, like, a very gracious way of bowing out without feeling like a jerk. Because sometimes it's not, I don't want to meet this founder, is we've already invested in that space, or I'm going on vacation for a month, or and I just don't have the time. I actually put this up on my Facebook page today. Like, please have both people accept the intro, right? And I think people don't understand. I'm just fucking up this whole thing, man. Just fucking up. Anyway, yeah. Is that children on here? No. I'm saying, what kind of outfit is this? But it allows the other person to gracefully bow out. And you don't want to like force somebody, like Brett forced somebody to take an intro with me. I'm probably not going to get the investment anyway because he's probably just doing it because of Brett. Right?
All right. I'm going to remind folks, this is your opportunity. We have about close to 40 people on here. What questions do you have for Brett or for Clarence? Anything around perfecting your pitch? Hit the chat button and just type it in there, and then we will get to it. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue with some of the questions that came through ahead of time. So we talked about the deck. What about, we hear a lot about having a concise, powerful elevator pitch. So do's and don'ts, advice that you would give to a founder around that.
On an elevator pitch?
Yep.
You want me to go first? So similar to, the elevator pitch, always remember the goal is to get the next meeting. Same thing with an elevator pitch. And usually when you're doing an elevator pitch, you're at something like a mini demo, right? Where there's 500 people milling around talking to people. And what I'd say is don't pitch your company at that, right? Like if you see Clarence and you want his help, don't go start pitching Clarence on your company. Give him the quick elevator, say, hey, this is what I do. This is, and the key is to give them, what's that one hook? From an elevator pitch, all you're really trying to do is get one key thing out that makes you memorable. You're not trying to describe your entire company. It's just like what's that first slide in your deck that's the most interesting thing? That's all that really needs to get out. And if you start pitching Clarence, he's probably, and you're taking 10 minutes, he's probably gonna start rolling his eyes and you're going to make a poor impression. It's better to say, hey, I'm Brett, I run Syndicate Fund, early stage venture fund. We'd love to meet with you at some point, man. That is so much better than trying to go in depth at it or at an event like a mini demo where Clarence probably has 20 people coming up to him and doing that, right? And so then the goal is to be the one or two of the 20 that he remembers, and then follow up, right? Then send an email with a quick follow up saying, hey, I told you this is the thing I was doing. Would love to get 30 minutes of your time. And so I guess for elevator pitch, the most important thing is what's that one key thing and that you want to get across, and practice. When we do Techstars at the Techstars programs, we actually will work with our founders, and we, at the very beginning of the program, we say, okay, get up to your 60 seconds. Then the next day, we actually don't tell them we're going to do this. We'll say, all right, do what you did yesterday, do it in 30 seconds. And then we say, do it in 10. And if you can't get your point across about what you do in your company in 10 seconds really quickly, you're probably not doing it right. And so it's, in 10 quick seconds, can you get it across? And so it's practice. I mean, honestly, like practice is a big part of it too. Like practice with people that know you, practice with people that don't know you, and say, hey, do you understand what I did in 10 seconds?
Right. Yeah, and I would add, I think, a point that Brett made about like not really pitching people, but like letting people see who you are from a personality standpoint. I think it's really important. I think, like for me, one of the things that has allowed me to get through this journey has been like creating like a personal relationship. So a lot of times it's not about me walking up to Brett and saying, let me pitch you on my business. Like even if I got my 7-second pitch down, a lot of times just be like, hey Brett, how's it going, man? And then like we have a conversation, and hey, then the magic in it is always, hey, so what do you do? Right? And now you're opening up the door because now you're telling me I actually want to hear what you're doing. And then if your 7-second, 10-second, whatever it is, pitch is tight, you do that, and then you say like, hey, but like this is a secret I've done. Like, hey, but I don't even want I want to get to know you, right? Like I don't want to sit here and talk. And what it does, it changed the power dynamics of like investor to founder to like, hey man, let's be friends, right? Like I don't care if you invest. I don't care about any of that. And I think that takes me to like my big point is that like a lot of founders don't understand, like if you make it transactional, it becomes transactional. If you build a strong relationship that's built on something more than your business and you pitching, like it tends to go better over time. Even if they have to tell you no, like they tell you no with compassion and they give you real reasons why they're telling you no for you to improve versus like it being transactional between Brett and I.
And most investors don't invest in people that they don't enjoy.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Like Clarence and I, we invested in Clarence's company 4 years ago, almost now, or three years ago, right?
No,
and
sorry, 2.5 years ago.
And so like Clarence and I spend time together every week have spent time together every week since then. And it is important. That's an important part of it. So getting to know people on that personal level, when I say what I look for when I invest, one of them is culture. And it's not just culture of their company, it's also the culture of that company meshed with the culture of what I like and my fund of people that I want to be around. So taking that approach can help start establishing that personal relationship. Because it's a big hurdle to get over is just
liking each other.
People liking each other.
And I love Brett. I really do.
I love it. So we have a few questions that came up. Aaron said, if you have a product or service that could service 2 separate markets, how do you build that into your pitch deck? Do you focus on one? Do you show both equally?
So from a founder standpoint, I believe in focus. And yeah, you see some people like not like painting a big picture, but it not being realistic. And I think like you need to go after a vertical and try to show some traction in that vertical and then start to move out. I just think focus is the thing that almost killed us early. And like I'm pretty fanatic about it. So I think you got to be focused on one and try to go win.
I agree. I think that it's my question back to you if you pitch me on two, like, well, which one are you doing first? Right. So I would try and focus you down. And so it's kind of what I said earlier, where I love it when you come out, this is what we're doing today. This is what we're solely focused on this thing. We're crushing it here. And this is why. And then you can bring that second market in your big vision later on. Like, but once we kill that one, we're going to take over the world here. Right. Like once we take over this first thing. And so I think that's the most effective way to do it.
It's like that's a $40 billion TAM, but like now we got a $100 billion TAM going after this next thing.
TAM is total addressable market. So
sorry about that. That's good.
Perfect. Abby wants to know, when talking about Blitzscaling, what was your experience, either an activity, persons you were intro to, or an action that allowed your business to scale?
So I think talent is the great equalizer in all of this. Like if you got amazing talent, like scaling becomes a lot easier. We're actually in that transition right now. So I think that's important. I think Blitzscaling is like this overused, like we're not going to make any money. We're just going to like grab users. I think you have to be very conscious of like CAC and LTV and all those things that matter. I think in a B2B or a B2C business. But I think the people you have around you is important. And you have to they have to be able to have the ability to do their job and to scale it.
Yeah, it's all down to team. All down to team. I mean, but what Clarence said also, like understanding your metrics and numbers. What allows you to scale quickly is understanding your CAC and LTV and the CAC and LTV for each of your individual sales and marketing channels. That's what allows you to do it. I mean, it's just I know if I put $1 into this one, I get $3 out of it, right? And then you just put more money into that. And if you don't know that yet, it's testing a variety of those things, and collecting data, being data focused, data forward. And understanding once you've tested it if it's going to work or not at that scale, and then having the team to execute on around it. There's no real secret to it.
And I would say you need to build being metric driven into your company as early as you possibly can. There are tools that you can use for cohort analysis. I was once in a conference. There was like 100 founders there, and I said, "Who in here does cohort analysis?" They were all early stage, like pre-seed seed, and nobody raised their hand. And I was so shocked. I was like that's such great information just to be able to tell an investor that it may not be good numbers, but just to be able to tell an investor that you are looking at your business like that. I think that's impressive. Right?
Yeah, and 100%. A CEO, like a quick way to get a no from me is if I ask the CEO for a number that is core to their business, and they're like, oh, like let me check with my CFO or let me check with this and CEOs need to know their numbers. Like you, a CEO, I don't care if you have a financial background or not. If you don't need to know like everything about it, but you need to, whatever those core metrics are, core most important things to your business are, you need to know those and you need to know them cold. Right. Like one of the reasons Clarence has been very successful is he knows his numbers cold. And when he pitches people and he gets challenged on things, he knows his stuff cold. And if you don't, it is a huge red flag as an investor. At the CEO level. Yep. Like the CEO, I get sometimes like, oh, I don't know that, but somebody on my team does. Like, terrible answer.
Wow.
All right, Jessica wants to know, she said, if there's time to return to the deck convo, I'd love to hear Brett and Clarence's top 3 PowerPoint cliches.
So number 1, so we're gonna do 3 between us. But I'll start off number 1. We don't have any competition. I'm like, huh? You have 0 competition. I think that's the number 1. Like literally, I see that in decks all the time. Like we don't. Where's your competitor slide at? We don't have competition. It's greenfield. $7 trillion TAM.
If you don't have competition, you have a stupid idea.
Pretty much.
It's true. Probably mine is an advisory board slide where you have you do team and then you have this advisory board slide with like 20 people on it.
Right.
And you see it, and like, there's no chance that all those people are actively engaged in your business. And it's a waste of a slide in my opinion. Right. But especially in an email off deck is like, here's our advisory board, because guess how many advisory boards are actually super active with their companies? Like very few.
Right. Right.
And the other thing you do is you open yourself up to me knowing somebody on your advisory board and calling them and saying, hey, are you active on Upsie? Right. And then be like, nah, I helped them once. Right. And so the advisory board slide is that extra information that tends not to be required. So that's one of my favorite ones.
Yeah. I actually just gave it away. Like the whole $7 billion or $7 trillion TAM. Like total addressable market is like what can you actually with a T. Like what can you actually get to your percentage of? And I think a lot of people look at the market and they just like, oh, this whole market is an opportunity, and it's like it actually doesn't work like that. So I think that's another cliche I have.
Other cliches. I mean,
we can come back to it.
Okay. Let's come back. I'm sure more will come up.
I'm trying to think of other ones. Like those are the one Clarence. All 3 of those are definite cliches.
Yeah.
If I think of another one.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. All right, Jasmine wants to know. She said, we are a service business. In the
what's up, Jasmine?
Hey, Jasmine.
Congratulations on your marriage, girlfriend.
In the process of developing a data platform this fall. In prepping to speak with investors, recommendations for how much we should speak to our client service business, which has provided insight, versus the capabilities of the new platform to investors.
I wouldn't talk about the former. Like if your business is the new platform, being super focused on that, because I think one mistake that founders make is talking too damn much. like they tell too much.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, you didn't really even need to tell them that. They don't care. I would concentrate on the new platform.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I'd focus on the new platform. And the problem with the knock against service businesses is they're not scalable.
Right.
And so if you lead with that, that's the first thing that's going to be in an investor's mind is, oh, this is a service business. I mean, if it adds real value to the company of like where the data came from or expertise you have, then you can use it as like we started this company because I was doing this thing, right? When you tell your founder story, we started the company because I was doing this thing and saw this need. And it was much bigger than what I was doing before. So we took this data and we moved to this new space to scale rapidly, right? Framing it like that is probably the best way to do it, in my opinion.
Nice. All right, Mohammed wants to know, if your pitch has multiple value propositions, should you focus on only the biggest value, even though the rest are significant too, or cover all of them? You touched on this a little bit, but anything you want to expand?
Yeah, I think you gotta be super focused, right? Like you gotta be focused. I think the only way that by Upsie we can talk about going into, covering everything in your home and auto and that kind of stuff is actually starting with, here's what we do today, here's our North Star, and then building trust around, okay, they know what they're doing with the North Star. Then saying, oh, and guess what else we're gonna be able to do? We're gonna be able to do auto, we're gonna be able to do other things. I think like adding more things come with trust that you build up with the investor. And once you have the trust, then you can start laying on stuff. And I think investors worry about, okay, if I'm going to give you millions of dollars and you're not focused, I mean, you're probably just going to blow through millions of dollars.
So I think that I guess I have a general interest in companies, and my theory on companies and startups in general is if I always like to ask, what's that one core value prop? I actually asked, what's the one thing that people are going to buy this for? Because I believe if you don't have one core thing, all of the little whistles and add-ons and extras aren't going to increase your conversion rate or aren't going to improve your company or aren't going to create like, oh man, if Maria just needs this one more thing, then she's going to buy it. Like that has never been the case for me in building companies. And so as an investor, what I like to do is like, hey, our core thing is this. This is the reason people are buying our product is this thing. However, that's one thing, but they also get all these ancillary benefits from it as well. I think that's a good way to present it is knowing what that one most important thing is and pitching that and then talking about the other benefits. But the same with the sales. Like if you're doing a sales pitch, it's the same thing. With the sales pitch, be very clear, which is a different kind of pitch, but it's still pitch. Being very clear of like, hey, Clarence, I know you need this one thing. This is what we do. And sometimes muddying the waters with other stuff actually will slow the sales process down. And I still am a firm believer, if you don't have that one core, if you're not solving that one core pain for people, then you're not going to be able to sell it. A bunch of value props aren't going to sell something. It needs to be one that's like, they step on a nail every day and you're solving that.
Right.
That's great. Joe wants to know, are there universal core metrics that ought to be in each pitch deck?
Yes. So, I mean, I don't care what business you do. I think things like CAC, even if you don't have an exact answer, just the fact that you're thinking about it should be in there. I think cohort analysis, I actually think it's the difference between getting early stage money today versus like not, like it being easier, is being able to speak to what your users are actually doing over time. Even if it's 6 months time, like that's enough time to understand. I think LTV is important. I think if you run a good cohort analysis, you'll be able to guess at LTV. And great investors know like that's not like for sure, but like you're making an educated guess.
People that don't know what LTV is.
I'm sorry, LTV is lifetime value of the customer. So I think those three things, I mean, out of that comes a bunch of other different numbers, but I think if you're focused on those three things, you'll find the rest of the numbers, other metrics in your business.
CAC is customer acquisition cost. How much does it cost you to acquire a new customer? And I think that CAC and LTV are both really valuable metrics. If you are super early and you haven't sold anything yet, you don't have customers yet, those probably wouldn't be as valuable. You can make guesses around it and make them educated guesses of like, here's research I did on the industry, or here's some founders I talked to that said this is where it should land, and our things are based on that. So if you're too early to have anything, if you're pre-product or pre-customer or user, they might not be metrics, right, that you can use or speak to specifically. And then different industries do have different core things. And what I would say is important to know is what, an e-com company might have a different and really important thing than a B2B enterprise SaaS might have one thing that's really important. CAC and LTV are pretty universal, but they also, and so make sure you know what investors care about in your thing.
In your industry.
And don't miss that.
Right.
And I thought of another faux pas or a deck, a slide deck faux. And this one I think is the worst because all it does is create a roadblock for you. Is pitch valuation. So a slide on your deck where you have the valuation. All that does is gives an investor a reason to say no.
Yes.
It literally cannot help you. There's no way that can help you unless you have severely undervalued your company.
Right.
The only way it helps you is if you severely undervalued your company, and then you screwed yourself anyway.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason you should ever put valuation in a pitch deck. Ever. Ever.
You should not even be talking about
No.
the evaluation. Like, I get asked this pretty often, like, hey, we're raising blah on blah. I'm like, how did you know that?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we saw this on. I'm like, no. The lead investor will set your valuation. And if they're a good lead investor, like, they're going to negotiate with you in good faith and they're going to do all that the right way. But for you to go in and say, hey, man, I want to raise 2 on 8 and you're pre-revenue, I'm just like,
I'm not taking the meeting.
No, I'm not even going to look at the business.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think what we're saying is to early stage founders, don't talk about valuation. Just go be great.
Mm-hmm.
And an investor will want to give you the valuation that's fair.
And you'll notice a trend in first-time founders versus veteran experienced founders. This is a real thing. First-time founders tend to care about what I'll call inconsequential equity far more than a veteran founder. An experienced founder does not care about inconsequential equity amounts at all. Because if I can hire Clarence and he adds 10% of value to my company, like, he is damn well worth 3%.
Exactly.
Right? Like if that $1 million you give me takes my for 20%, adds 100% in value to my company, that is worth it. Doesn't matter if it, and so experienced founders tend to be more realistic and more understanding around equity. And honestly, if you're raising venture capital anyways, the goal is not to build a $10 million business where that incremental equity might matter. The goal is to build a $1 billion business if you're raising venture.
Right.
And if you're the founder, at the end of the day, after multiple rounds, maybe you own in the teens, right? And so let's say, what's the difference for you if you own 13% of a $1 billion company or 15% of a $1 billion company? Like, does it matter?
No.
Like, is there anything you can do with $150 million that you can't do with $130 million?
Right.
Like, probably not. So it doesn't really matter anyways. And so don't get hung up on that 1%.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah. Don't put valuations in a pitch deck. It's stupid.
Johnny wants to know, how would you recommend doing a good cohort analysis, Clarence?
So I think there's tools, cohort analysis tools that you can use. We built ours internally when we first did the company. We literally attached it to every cell. So we were able to do it right out the gate. But there's so many tools out there. If you just like Google cohort analysis tools, like you'll see so many that you can just plug into your platform unless you customize it to the data that's important to you with those customers, depending on whether you're B2B or B2C. And just start trying. Like, we look at our cohort analysis. I bet y'all look at it 3 times a week, 4 times. It's just like always watching to make sure that customers are buying, at what rate are they buying, what are they spending, what's their average AOV, like what do they start off spending versus what they spend on. It's like all that kind of comes out of doing it the right way.
And make sure you, the important thing is for cohort analysis too, I mean, when I explain what it is,
Sure.
So a cohort analysis is saying, okay, in this given period of time, usually you see it like on a monthly basis, like people that bought from Upsie in January of this year, this is how they progressed over time as a set of customers versus people that bought in February versus people that bought in March. And theoretically what it allows you to do as a founder is, are you actually making progress? If you think, like, if you're pitching me that, hey, this is what our LTV is today, but it's going to improve over time, a cohort analysis should show if it actually improves over time. And you can do that with not just LTV, but a variety of different metrics. And I think that one of the really important things of doing it when you do it is picking the right metrics to measure. Right? Pick metrics that matter. And this is just in general what the question about what metrics should you have in a pitch deck. a metric you probably shouldn't have in a pitch deck, and often another faux pas of a deck is usually it happens, especially in B2C apps, like downloads. Like, I mean, number of downloads don't matter. And you get pitched out a lot, like, oh, we have 100,000 downloads. Well, maybe only one. I'd much rather have, 1,000 really active, super great downloads or users than 100,000 that have touched it once and never come back.
Right.
And a cohort analysis can be a powerful tool to show that.
And
so,
what are those metrics called in the investor world?
Which one? KPIs?
No. But what are those metrics called when people say?
Oh, vanity.
Yes.
So vanity metrics. So making sure that you don't have vanity metrics in your pitch deck around things that, because it just shows it, like, good investor, and you might be able to fool like some people with vanity metrics, like inexperienced angel investors or inexperienced investors. And honestly, you probably don't want those people on your cap table anyways, because they're going to be a pain in the ass in the long run.
Right.
Experienced investors that know what the hell they're doing are going to see a vanity metric and think you don't know. Either one of two things: either you don't know what the hell you're doing as a founder because this matters to you, or you're trying to pull one over on you.
Yep.
And those
both are bad.
And both are bad. And those are the two things that we're going to think if you have those. And so don't put vanity metrics in your pitch deck. And know what your vanity metrics are. What are those metrics that actually matter? Downloads usually isn't one of them, as an example. Usage. No matter what your company is, usage matters more than anything, more than revenue, especially at an early stage. Usage matters more than anything. Even if you're B2B enterprise SaaS and you've sold that in, how are they actually using it? Because that's going to be a leading indicator for your potential success for future sales and for whether you can retain that client or not. And and if you're a B2C app, usage will say, are people going to pay for this? Are they going to tell their friends? Usage is a really, really powerful metric.
Yeah. I mean, and if you're doing the cohort analysis, right? The amazing thing is when you get in front of a dope investor who's really good and understands their stuff. And remember, like founders, we go deep. Investors go wide, right? So if you can come into a meeting and have your cohort analysis, and this is a trick I do actually, like Brett actually see me do it, where I will go to a pitch meeting. I will have my cohort analysis on my laptop up first and my deck behind it. And I will plug into the TV, and I always ask for water. And I'll plug into the TV, it'll light up the TV, and I'll go grab a cup of water, and investors walk in, and the cohort analysis is just sitting on the TV. And there's not been a time where I've been on the road where investors didn't walk in and sit down, the cohort analysis on TV, and I'm like, oh, sorry about that. Like, let me put my deck up. There's not been a time when nobody said, hey, can you actually pull back up your cohort analysis? Like, it's that important to understanding your business and what you're doing and being able to rattle off information. Like, man, like at Upsie, we know that 40% of our customers make their second purchase within 90 days. Since June of 2018, June 1st, that's down to 36 days. So, like, being able to speak at that level of detail just gives him confidence. Like, oh, okay, well, I know I can discount some of this stuff, right? Because I just know, like, data may be right or whatever, but if he has this much detail in his business, I can probably trust that he's going to figure it out.
I got another deck faux pas.
Do it.
And this one's less deck and more financial statements. And this is really common with founders is when they build financial projections, they start with a number, like call it 100, and then they just say it's going to grow by 10% month over month. And it's a top-down financial projections where you say revenue's $100 in month one, and then you grow 10% month over month forever. Right. And so that, I mean, it's funny, but that is the most common way that founders build financial projections. Right. And it gets back to knowing your numbers, and the correct way to do it is to build it from bottoms up. So start with what are the things that are going to drive usage or revenue, like spending money on Google Ads or hiring a salesperson or whatever it is for your business. Say we're going to spend this much money on that, and then that is what's going to drive revenue, not some random number that is magically pulled out of the air, and that's going to drive growth. And so build your financial statements from bottom up, and we all know that projections are going to be wrong. Like everybody's projections are going to be wrong. Be really careful on that though, because if you're pitching if Clarence pitches me today in October and he gives me like 12-month, month-over-month projections, which is pretty typical, chances are he's not going to close this round for probably 3 months. It's going to take 3 months to close, and I get to see if he hit his projections for November, December, and January before he closes. And if he is way off in November, especially if you can't project 1 month away, then you're probably not going to get investment. And if you kill that number and destroy it, then you're going to look really good. So just understand that there's that dynamic also. I've literally, when I was fundraising, I've pitched the same investor a year apart, and for one round and then the next round. And that investor literally pulled out my deck and financials in my pitch from the year before, a year later. She had it on file and she pulled it out and put it in front of her. And it was like, so like, this is what you said you were going to do when you pitched me a year ago. What'd you do? It was killer. It's the only time that's ever happened, but it was
awesome. Yeah.
I thought it was great.
That's awesome. All right.
She didn't invest.
Yeah.
She didn't invest. She didn't invest. I didn't do everything.
She would say her name.
No, I don't mind. Like, a lot of people didn't invest in that stuff.
No, I thought that was the story was going to end with, and she invested, but I guess
no, she didn't. She didn't invest.
All right, so we have a couple questions that came through the Q&A box. So the first one is from Brian. Brian said, whenever I'm asked to pitch 101, I try to ask my listener a question before I launch into my pitch. That's kind of what you were saying. Do you have similar practices that help establish rapport?
Yeah. I think it depends on the relationship with the person. I don't ever think I've gotten to one-on-one without the person like having some sort of relationship. So I don't know if I ask that question in like on a typical like pitch environment, but in the one-on-one, I don't think I'm like, so Brett, have you ever walked through Best Buy and get your warranty? I think like by the time we got to the one-on-one, he already knows like the answer to that. So I just think it depends on the room and the person probably.
I meet a lot of people I have meetings with a lot of people that I've never actually really, maybe I get an email, but I haven't really met before. And usually my first, like if I break the ice, my first question is, I literally say like, so what do you want to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
And so be ready for that, right? I mean, if you ask for a meeting with somebody, you need to be ready to drive that meeting. And so when I get asked to meet with somebody, I'm going to sit down and be like, hey, so what do you want to talk about, Clarence?
Right.
And then sometimes there's really awkward silences and that's weird. And like, oh, I just wanted to, because you want like, if you ask for a meeting with somebody, have a goal of that meeting. Otherwise, you're wasting people's time.
Right.
And so come prepared to answer that. Even if they don't ask you that question, basically approach it like they're going to ask you that question and be ready for, it's great. Or, in sales, I used to always, when I was running sales, if I walked into a room to sell to somebody one-on-one, I would actually observe the office and what they had in the office. And if they had a basketball, I'd probably break in like, you a Timberwolves fan?
Right.
Or if they had a picture of the family, I would say, oh, do you have kids? I would start with, do you have kids? I would point to it like, hey, or something.
Mm-hmm.
I would try and notice my surroundings and try and find something that like I have in my history. Like I love college basketball. So if I did basketball, I assume they did. If they had kids, I have kids, I would assume that we could like find some common ground. And I would try to like look at the surrounding when I walked into it and have something ready to quickly build rapport between two people. And that worked pretty well with sales for me.
Allison wants to know, when is the right time to start meeting with investors? How much traction, revenue, etc. to be taken seriously?
Yeah. I don't think there's like a right time. I think you have to, you have to figure out what right time is. There's companies who are pre-seed or pre-revenue. There's companies who are you have to figure out what is the right time for you. I don't think we can say like at this traction, you should meet with this investor. Like businesses are different.
Ask for advice, get money. Ask for money, get advice. These are pretty common saying. And it's true. Again, as an investor, you're investing in team as much as anything. Right. And so the earlier I meet you, the more I can learn about you as a team and build that rapport with you and see if you execute on things you said you were going to execute. So one thing I do recommend everybody does, if you know where you are at stage-wise, right? So make sure you're pitching the right people. And if you are a seed stage company, don't go pitch an A fund for money.
Right.
Try and get the meeting with A fund and say, hey, I just need your advice, right? I know, and go and immediately walk into the room and totally get them off, not off guard, but take them off of and say, hey, I am not ready for you.
Right.
Like, we are not at your stage for your fund.
Right.
I know that. However, I am raising a seed round. You're an A investor. I would love your advice on two things. One is, do you mind if I walk you through my pitch and see where I got holes? And two is, I'd love to know where I would need to be as a company for you to invest. So when I plan on how much to raise and I build my financial plans, I make sure I raise enough money so I can get my company to the stage it needs to be for you to invest in me. And that is a great way to defuse don't pitch me, you're not ready for me type of conversation. Most people are good people and they're willing to give advice. Like, advice is easy to give, right? And if you're too early, so if you're a pre-seed company, most funds don't invest pre-seed, so you're going to be pitching angels. You're going to waste your time and their time. But it is really impressive when I get pitched by a company and says, at seed stage, and they're like, and I ask them, okay, where does this get you? Like, where does this round get you? And you can say, well, it's going to allow me to get to this point, and that's enough because it's going to allow me to do this. It's going to allow me to raise the next round of capital, and I know that because I've talked to 5 funds that are all interested in tracking us that we're too early with, but I have those relationships already. And so the earlier you can build relationships, the better, but don't pitch those people if they're not stage appropriate for you. And the best way to find out if things are stage appropriate for you is fund's website. Almost every fund says like what stage they invest in. And then if you can't find it there, talk to a founder they invested in, and that's probably the best way. So talk to a founder that they've invested in, and they'll definitely tell you.
If I could underscore something that I don't know if we've called out directly today, is do your research on the people that you're meeting with. I see that all the time. I feel like if you're going in, if you're having the email connection, that also reflects well, like if, on Brett or whatever, but do your research. So one of the questions,
and I would actually say, I think that's really smart, is do your research, and not just, there's a lot of different types of pitches, right? That's true for a sales pitch. That's true for an investor pitch. That's true for getting up on stage at a pitch and understanding what your audience is, right? And pitching to your, and what's your audience, and knowing what your goal is of each one of these pitches. If you get up on stage at Techstars Demo Day, what's your goal? Who's your audience there? If you get up on stage at Mini Demo, what's your goal? Who's your audience? If you get up on stage, if you're at the Beta Showcase, what's your goal? Who's your audience? Understanding those things in all of these scenarios is really important and should drive what kind of pitch you do.
Yeah, and that's that's one thing that we get a question on sometimes with Mini Demo is it is different, right? It's more about the tech. It's not as much about the sales pitch. And so sometimes when people are applying, they don't know that, and we're really focused on, yes, we want to hear their story, but also you're going to be plugging in and showing us and driving it. And so it's a different environment, and the folks that are really successful are the ones who have done the research ahead of time that know that. Right, so one of the things, the question that came up actually before both of you got here from Stephanie, if she's listening, Halloween's tomorrow. Wanted to know, what are some horror stories? Some pitching or investing horror stories.
God, I got so many.
Do you have any that you've done, like when you were the one pitching?
Well, I don't think I can talk about those. God, you know what? Well, I'm gonna give a general answer here. Like some of the things that Brett said about like some of the things that entrepreneurs do. Like I've done literally most of those things wrong. I think early on when you're getting started, you do the valuation in the deck. Like you do some of that stupid stuff, and literally I think I've done all of it that we joked about. Like that's the truth. And I guess so now I'm kind of in my grace like comfort founders mode, which is like you can come back from all those mistakes. Like that's what's great about this game is that you can make all of those mistakes and then you figure it out because you get really good people around you who start to kind of mold you in a way, and then you almost become a machine at how you raise, how you talk to investors, that kind of stuff. So I'm not gonna go deep into my I've literally done all those things wrong times 10. But you can do them all wrong and come back and still have success.
That's awesome.
Horror stories. I've been pitched by. I hold a lot of office hours, and I had one where somebody signed up for office hours with me, and their concept was not even close to something I would invest in. Right, so they hadn't done their research, and then. This is less the pitch, it's pre-pitch. And I sent them a link to sign up, and I have open office hour slots. And they signed up for all of them, right? Back to back. And this is like the specific office hour slot I do on a recurring basis so it's on my, they were signing up for office hours 6 months from today. They filled all of my slots out. It was insane. So that was one that you probably shouldn't do.
What'd you do?
I emailed him and said, well, I deleted all of them except the one. I talked to him. Yeah, I talked to him for 15 minutes, or it ended up being 10 minutes. It was not a very good call. And we ended up talking this specific one's a 15-minute office hour slot that I do every week. And we talked for 10 minutes and we're done. That was one. I've been pitched for most of my horror stories are being pitched for just random off the wall things. Like, oh, I got pitched for a windowless airplane once. I got pitched for no windowless airplane. Like, it was no, it's not gonna work, Clarence.
Intriguing.
I actually got pitched by somebody recently. I can't remember what it is, but it was like fairly. I mean, as long as the people are good, it doesn't matter. Like, who cares? Like, what you're pitching me. The worst pitches are usually when people are talking over each other.
Right.
So like, you have 3 co-founders in a room, and like one person just keeps cutting everybody off. Those are like the biggest horror stories. And you walk out of the room, and you're like, well, not investing in that team.
Right.
I got a horror story. Like, and so not me, because I actually made every mistake in the book, but when like another founder asked for an intro to an investor, and then like they do this, so I always ask, send across your deck, like, because I need to vet you before I like put my name on you, and then they send across a deck that's just like so bad and so terrible. I'm just like, and I had to email back like, hey man, like, let's jump on a call, let's talk about your deck. Now I always hop on the phone. I'm like, hey man, do you want the candid Clarence or do you want the graceful Clarence? And they always say candid Clarence. I'm like, your deck sucks. And like, here's how we get it in a much better place. That's what I see that so much. It's like 3 times a week probably.
The other horror stories I have are where somebody drops a name in a meeting, and I know the person, and I call them. Like, the first thing I do is I call that person, and like they drop name. Like, I actually think it literally happened to Clarence, where somebody has name dropped Clarence.
Oh yeah, we've talked about this.
And with me, and I called him. I was like, hey, this person said you're really close. You're advising. And Clarence is like, I met him once, man.
Right.
That literally happened once.
Right.
That is an actual example. If you name drop, be careful.
Right.
This is a small community in that sense. Like, a lot of people know each other.
And the venture community in general.
Across the country. Is small.
Not even here.
So we have about 4 minutes left. One of the questions that I want to get to is that when we're thinking about folks that are new to the community, or just maybe new to just the startup ecosystem in general, how do you recommend new folks building their network and getting connected to the community?
I mean, I'd say go to there's a lot of really good community events now. And the best way to get connected is actually not just going to them, but volunteering to volunteer, offering to volunteer. So like, if you volunteer for Minnestar, or you volunteer for Beta, or you volunteer for some of the organizations that put on the events, that's actually probably the quickest way to plug in, because then people are going to be more likely to help you, talk to you, meet you. And so you can get meetings with a lot of us, because people are willing to help in the Twin Cities, which is a great part of the network, this area and this community. But volunteering at some of the startup-focused events is far better than just attending the startup-focused events. You can attend them, and that's good.
I think we should get this question. This is a really good question.
Yep. All right, Jim wants to know, recently I heard from a friend working at a startup, non-founder. The founder is pitching and brought my friend into the room to help give some insights into his particular area of expertise. The feedback from the investor was that my friend was not the right person to lead that part of the business. Ultimately, the investor didn't invest, and this feedback is now making my friend question his place in the business, despite the founder saying otherwise. If you were this founder, how do you decide which employees to expose to potential investors while protecting your employees from immediate, blunt, and sometimes incomplete feedback from investors?
Good.
So I'm super passionate about this question.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
So I think there's a couple of different things here. Like, investors are great, right? Like, I love Brett to death. But what Brett is telling me is one point of view from his eyes. Like, that's not law. It's not God. It's one point. And we as founders often do this a lot. Like, this investor told me to do that, so I need to go back and do this. It's like, no, that's just one data point, right? The truth is that, for this situation, I would say, like, that investor wasn't the right investor for you. Does that mean you don't go back and look at, like, is this the right person? Because, like, we make mistakes all the time as founders and, like, put the wrong people in the wrong seat. And you spend a lot of time just, like, changing seats on a plane with people. But that's for you to do. If an investor feels like this person's not the right person to run this thing, like, you listen, man, thank you for the feedback, and move on. But you gotta understand, you're gonna hear no way more than you hear yes. I don't need 100 yeses. I only need one. Everybody else can say no, I need one. So I would say don't put too much of your what's going on with you. Don't put too much into that vessel. Like listen, like be humble enough to like understand what they're saying and thank them for their feedback. But don't take it as law because they don't know your business how you don't know it. They don't know this person how you know them. They're making an opinion based off of money, and money is the most emotional thing in people's lives is when it's their money. So he's making an emotional decision. I would say listen, but move on.
I mean, if you start seeing a trend, then you have to question yourself, right?
Yeah.
But it's a data point. Every time you talk to a mentor, advisor, investor, every one of them is a data point. I talk about that all the time. I agree. So they're all data points. I do think that there is something to be said about a first investor meeting. It might not be the best idea to bring people outside of the founding team into that meeting. Because again, we're investing in the founding team. Right. You are the ones that are really vested and incented in this thing much more than an employee is. And the first time you meet me, I want to hear from that CEO, specifically the CEO. I don't mind if 3 co-founders, CTO, CEO, COO, like I like having them all in the room too. I want the CEO to run the room though, to be honest.
And I actually think that's the biggest mistake I see a lot of times is I actually just saw it here at Techstars a few months ago when I was in a room with a founder, but the VP of something was doing all the talking. And I remember looking at the founder being like, okay, who runs the show here though? And that's not to sound like arrogant, like because I'm the founder, I need to I need to be the one in the room. But I think Brett is looking for like who's going to lead the company, who has who's the de facto answer in the company. And whenever you see like a VP or somebody else talking and kind of butting heads with the founder, it makes me say, oh, that group won't make it long term because sooner or later he's going to have to make a decision or she's going to have to make a decision. Who's going to make the decision?
Right. And the CEO, it's good if you are in a room with a founding team, or make sure the CEO should run the conversation. Yeah. But if you get asked, if your CTO's there and you get asked a question about your technology, the CEO is, hey, why don't you take that?
Right.
Right. And let her take it. Yeah. And so it's not just talking the whole time, it's just but running the room. The difference between talking the whole time and running the room is 2 different things.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I'd bring a non-founding employee into a first meeting. Maybe subsequent meetings. If investors are going to lead around and do real diligence on your company, they're going to come meet.
They're going to come meet your team. The truth is, they're going to come in and they're going to say, "Hey, can I meet with Katie?" Right? And they're going to be like, "Sure." Go off. But that's we're down the line, due diligence, that kind of stuff. That's not. I don't even think that's the first couple of meetings.
Nope.
Somebody comes in.
All right. Well, we are at time. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank Clarence and Brett. There's so many just nuggets of genius knowledge. So thank you so much. Mini AMAs are going to be monthly. So join us next month. We have Caroline Karanja from 26 Letters. She's going to be talking about building a diverse and inclusive workplace environment. So come join us for that.
Parting shot?
Yeah. Look, if anybody needs to find me, if you need, I mean this, you can email me, cbethea@upsie.com. You can find me on Twitter at Clarence_Bethea.
I got a different parting shot. You can always reach out to me too.
Okay.
Parting shot is don't assume, since we talked a lot about fundraising today, you don't have to fundraise in just the Twin Cities. And that's another real just pet peeve of mine. I can't fundraise. Well, did you go anywhere?
Right.
There's a lot of money in Chicago. Right. Where did your last round of money come from?
San Francisco.
And, there's a lot. How many cities did you travel to?
7.
Yeah. So there's not a lot of money here. That's okay. If you have a great business, it doesn't matter if there's a lot of money here or not. There's a lot of money all over the country. And go to Chicago, go to LA, go to New York, go to Atlanta. It doesn't matter. Go find the money. Don't expect, the money is not going to come to you, most definitely. No. Go to the money. And so don't worry about, don't complain about it either, because you can't control it. So who cares? Go do something about it.
Right. And I will add to that before we go. If you are raising money, a piece of advice I give to every founder here in town, reach out to Brett, reach out to Ryan Brochard at Matchstick, reach out to those two. And the reason why I say do that is because not only do their network kind of permeates through the whole community, but like you're gonna get real honest feedback that you can bet is things to help you get better and not things to kill you as a founder, like things that are not gonna make you down.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important to understand between the two that like when I'm talking to this investor who cares about the community, cares about me, that they give me honest feedback that's gonna help me grow versus like stifle me. So I would say if you're in the community, reach out to those two and just ask for a 15-minute meeting.
Thank you again, and we'll see you next
Thank
month. Bye, everyone. Clarence, your contact info again. Can you tell me your email again?
Just do a type.
Oh, I'm sorry. My email is cbethea, that's CBETHEA @upsie.com. And we can type it in too right here. Right?
Absolutely. And Jessica did ask, we are recording this. We're going to be sharing it out on Minnestar's social channels as well as with our mailing list. So if you're not familiar, if you're not on the mailing list, minnestar.org/newsletter, and you can join that. We will definitely be sharing that out. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.